Chapter 10 to 12. In the living room. Now that the children have left, the adults can finally talk about serious matters. However, this matter is very troublesome. Mr. Fujimaru massaged his temples. He couldn't believe that the child his wife had picked up was actually from the Tosaka family. To make matters even more complicated, now the head of the Tosaka family and someone from the Mato family had come to request the child's return. The Tosaka and Mato families are well known in Fuyuki City, where they have long cultivated their influence in the old town nestled in the mountains. Although the power of these two families has waned in recent years with the rise of modern commerce, particularly in the newly developed city of Shinto, the Fujimaru couple, a pair of down-on-their-luck individuals, are no match for their might. Given the benefits and reality of the situation, it would be in the best interest of the Fujimaru couple to release the child immediately. However, I'm sorry, Mrs. Tosaka, but I must speak frankly. I cannot in good conscience hand over Sakura to a mother who abandoned her in Shinto and showed no concern or interest to her for 15 days, Mrs. Fujimaru said gravely. Sure enough, she spoke. Mr. Fujimaru sighed inwardly, understanding his wife's character well. While she may not be particularly warm-hearted, she would never abandon a daughter she had accepted as her own. This was due to her own childhood experience of being abandoned by her poor parents in a bustling, but indifferent city. Determined to be an excellent mother, she vowed to never abandon her child, even if she struggled with expressing love and providing education due to a lack of role models. I did not abandon Sakura, Tosaka Aoi replied calmly, unfazed by Fujimaru's suspicions. As a mother, I always consider my child's well-being. I would never do anything that could harm her. In fact, I have been searching for her these past few days, believing she was in Miyama. I am very grateful to Mrs. Fujimaru for taking care of Sakura over the past half-month, but may I request her return now? Fujimaru was left speechless by Tosaka's sincere, heartfelt emotion. While Mrs. Fujimaru was hot-tempered and her feelings were genuine and strong, Tosaka was gentle and graceful, like water. The contrast between the two women was clear. I apologize, Mrs. Tosaka, for not returning Sakura to you right away after confirming that you are her birth mother. My wife has become deeply fond of Sakura over the past few months, going so far as to buy furniture and clothes that are suitable for her and even preparing to have Sakura's household registration transferred to our family. I hope you can understand the difficult position we find ourselves in. Mr. Fujimaru tried to calm down Mrs. Fujimaru before turning to Mrs. Tosaka and speaking. While Mr. Fujimaru has had similar experiences to Mrs. Fujimaru, he has also had the opportunity to interact with a variety of people in his work and has developed strong emotional intelligence and communication skills. These abilities have allowed him to handle difficult situations like this one more effectively. I am very grateful to you, Mr. Fujimaru, and I'm sure Sakura feels the same way. As for any economic losses you may have incurred, the Tosaka family is willing to compensate you, Mrs. Tosaka said. Mr. Fujimaru waved his hand and said, money isn't an issue. It's the emotional investment that's the problem. Mrs. Tosaka, can you tell me why Sakura ran away from home? Mrs. Tosaka hesitated. She wasn't sure how to answer the question. Should she mention that Sakura had heard that her father was planning to have her adopted by the Mato family? Why hasn't Mr. Tosaka come with you? Mr. Fujimaru asked. Well, Tosaka Aoi hesitated, not sure how to answer. Should she tell them that her Magus husband was completely focused on the upcoming Holy Grail War and had no energy to spare for anything else? No. Even so, her husband, Sakura's father, had such strong paternal love that he had broken the rules of being a Magus and spent a lot of energy lamenting his usually obedient daughter's rebellion while planning strategies. But how could she explain this to the Fujimaru couple, who were ordinary people? Despite appearing mild and polite in comparison to his fiery and loud-spoken wife, Mr. Fujimaru had proven himself to be a tough and perceptive man with his sharp question. Tosaka Aoi, with her good upbringing, couldn't bring herself to lie, but she also couldn't find a way to answer this question honestly. This is Mr. Fujimaru, seeing Aoi's difficulty. Mato Korea, who was by her side, quickly intervened. Sakura's father is currently occupied with very important work, so he is unable to come at this time. Excuse me, Mr. Korea, what is your relationship with Mrs. Tosaka? Fujimaru asked. I am. Korea stumbled, flustered. Korea is my friend, Tosaka Aoi said firmly. Korea's eyes darkened, and he awkwardly chuckled at Fujimaru. Yes, I am Aoi Nechan's friend. Friend? Fujimaru couldn't see it at all, but his common sense kept him from pointing this out. Mr. Fujimaru, I don't mean to threaten you, but legally, physically, and emotionally, Atsui Nechan is Sakura's guardian. You should understand this, right? Korea may not be skilled with words, but as someone who is not involved in magic, he understood the rules of the ordinary world better than Magus. Yes, my wife and I understand. We respect the law and follow it, and we are not unreasonable people. Fujimaru nodded. Despite having difficult childhoods, the Fujiwara couple had grown up to be law-abiding and normal. If Sakura were just an ordinary abandoned child, the Fujiwara family would have no problem accepting her. However, Sakura has parents, and adoption is something that cannot be ignored by the law. In fact, from the moment Tosaka Aoi arrived, Fujiwara knew that it was inevitable that Sakura would be taken home. The challenge was in finding a way to handle the situation smoothly, without offending important people, and ensuring that his family wouldn't be left with psychological scars. Men, unlike boys, have people they must protect. Fujimaru, who was highly emotionally intelligent and mature in handling things, still found this matter tricky. Running away from home shows that there are conflicts between Sakura and Mrs. Tosaka. Let her choose. If Sakura still wants to stay here, it means that she has not let go of her resentment. Taking some time apart may help improve your relationship. Mrs. Tosaka, what do you think of this idea? Mr. Fujimaru proposed. Agreeing to let Sakura choose would be the most acceptable outcome, no matter what her decision might be. After considering it, Tosaka Aoi finally nodded in agreement. In the end, Sakura, under the disappointed gaze of Fujiwara Chiyo, chose to go home with Tosaka Aoi. Of course, no matter how angry the reason was for choosing to run away from home, a 6-year-old child's biggest wish after being away from home for half a month is still to go home. But, holding the hands of the two children, Tosaka Aoi sat in the back seat of a car, while Mato Kariya sat in the driver's seat and started the engine. The night was enchanting. A red Honda Accord was driving on the national highway. It went from Shinto to Miyama. Kariya, thank you very much for your help this time. When I heard about Sakura running away from home, you even rushed back from out of town to help me. Tosaka Aoi, holding the two children who were now asleep, thanked Kariya, who was holding the steering wheel. Don't mention it, Aoi. I was also very worried when Sakura went missing. Kariya tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Speaking of it, has that Tokiomi guy summoned his servant and participated in the Holy Grail War already? Kariya changed the subject and asked. Tosaka Aoi pursed her lips. Kariya, even though you've left the Magecraft world, you're still a member of the Mato family. I naturally know that, Aoi. Sorry. Please don't mind this matter. Kariya tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Speaking of which, what have you been doing lately? Aoi asked, stroking Sakura's hair. Well, I'm working at a light novel publishing company. Oh, by the way, Aoi, since Sakura has already been found, I'll be leaving in a couple of days. Some of the authors under my management have missed their deadlines for a week now, so I need to go chase them up. Is that so? Aoi hesitated for a long time, unable to voice the request in her heart. As a member of the Tosaka family, she knew she should clearly draw a line with the Mato family. Despite this, Kariya, a member of the Mato family, had already helped her more than once. Aoi didn't want to take advantage of the situation by asking for another favor, especially now that Kariya was busy with work. What is it, Aoi? Kariya asked, growing anxious as Aoi remained silent for so long. He knew that he couldn't turn back now that he was on the highway, and the thought of causing a traffic accident or harming the woman he deeply loved filled him with dread. He knew that he would suffer for the rest of his life if anything happened to Aoi. It's nothing, Aoi said softly. By the way, Kariya, is it hard working at the publishing company? Aoi's voice was always so gentle. Kariya thought to himself. It's okay, I guess, Kariya said with a sigh. It's just that these authors are so lazy. We have a plan in place that allows them to complete their work while still having free time to play, but they always end up rushing to finish their manuscripts at the end of the month because they're so lazy. Some of them even run away and don't turn in any manuscripts at all, so we editors have to go catch them personally. A few of them don't even write anything, and we have to hold a knife to their necks to force them. Kariya unburdened himself, venting the frustrations of his work to Aoi. Oh, that must be really hard, Aoi said with a sympathetic smile. Kariya felt his heart lighten and his energy return at Aoi's words. However, he still didn't hear the words he wanted to hear the most. She knew he would be leaving in a couple of days, but maybe that was for the best? Kariya asked himself this in his heart as he wrestled with his feelings. He loved his childhood friend deeply, but couldn't bring himself to confess his love and was eventually left behind when Aoi married Tosaka Tokiomi. He would never be willing to bring the woman he loved deeply into the dirty, filthy Mato family. As long as I can see Aoi happy, that's enough, Kariya repeatedly told himself in his heart. He knew that his own happiness was secondary as long as he could see the woman he loved happy and content. Wah. Mommy. Sakura woke up from a nightmare, looking at her mother Aoi with a pair of sleepy, pitiful eyes. Mommy, don't abandon Sakura. Aoi couldn't make a promise, knowing that she couldn't go against the wishes of her husband. She was torn between her duty as a Magus' wife and her duty as a mother. But Aoi had already made up her mind and made her decision before Sakura ran away from home. Despite this, She fully understood that her husband's values were different from those of ordinary people, and she blindly loved him. She gently stroked Sakura's head, silently telling herself, everything is the best choice. She knew that her husband would never make a mistake, and she trusted him fully. As a magus, her husband has magical abilities and their child has inherited those abilities. Sakura also has excellent potential for studying magic. In order to help their child reach their full potential and become an excellent magus, this is the best choice. Even though it will be painful for a mother to let go, the bright future of the child makes it worth it. Everything is for the best. Tosaka Aoi's silence made Sakura uneasy, but Kariya laughed and said, Sakura, how could your mother abandon you? Uncle Kariya doesn't believe it for a second. Sleep well. When you wake up, you'll be home. Kariya understands Tosaka Aoi's personality and knows that she is an excellent woman and will also be an excellent mother. He couldn't believe that Tosaka Aoi would abandon her child. At most, she might do something that the child doesn't understand, but that is ultimately very beneficial for them. It's like how normal mothers scold their children for not studying or doing their homework. Please help me take care of Sakura. These words stuck in her throat. Aoi knew that if she asked Kariya for help, he would surely take care of Sakura. But she still couldn't bring herself to say those words to Kariya. The Tosaka family and the Matsu family are both magical families, allies in creating the Holy Grail War ritual, but at the same time, they are each other's greatest enemies. She is from the Tosaka family, and Kariya is from the Matsu family. It's already troublesome for the other party to put down their work and travel back here to help find Sakura. How could she still ask for such a troublesome favor from him? That would be too shameless. The red Honda Accord drove all the way from Shinto to the Tosaka mansion in Miyama. Thank you, Kariya. I really appreciate it this time, Tosaka Aoi said as she led the two children off the car. Ah, it's nothing, Aoi Nasan. Here are the keys. I have to get back to the hotel. Kariya handed the car keys back to Aoi and then left. Tosaka Aoi led the two children back to the mansion. Tokiomi is a classic magus. Elegant, composed, and resolute. Tokiomi, due to his noble birth and early experiences, has a haughty personality and is extremely confident. He is a man with both pride and an unyielding character. As a magus, Tokiomi has a strong sense of pride and self-esteem. He believes that, as a magus, he must maintain the dignity of his profession and, because he is not bound by worldly restrictions, he must be more self-restrained. Despite his pride and self-restraint, there is one thing that sets him apart from other magi, his love for his children. Unlike many magi who only allow one of their children to inherit the family's magic crest and discriminate against children based on their magical aptitude, Tokiomi loves and cares for both of his daughters equally. However, perhaps because of this, heaven has given him both the greatest joy and the most painful punishment. Both of his daughters have excellent magical aptitude, but only one of them can inherit the family's magic crest and succeed him as head of the household. This is a choice that could have been made slowly over time. However, as the head of the Tosaka family, Tokiomi must participate in the Holy Grail War in order to fulfill the wish of the Tosaka family and achieve the ultimate goal of being a magus. This is a war with a high likelihood of death. In order to prevent the extinction of the Tosaka family, he must choose an heir before he leaves to participate in the Holy Grail War. After much hesitation, Tokiomi ultimately chose his outgoing older daughter, Rin, to inherit the Tosaka family. However, this does not mean that he abandoned Sakura. Tokiomi loves both of his daughters equally, and even though he chose Rin as the heir, he did not give up on Sakura. He worked hard to ensure a bright future for her. Even as he prepared for the life and death battles of the Holy Grail War, he devoted a lot of energy to thinking about his daughter's future. Fortunately, his efforts paid off. The Matsu family of Fuyuki City, who had a poor candidate for succession, were willing to adopt Sakura and raise her to be the head of the Matsu family. Tokiomi was overjoyed at this outcome. What could make a father happier than seeing his daughter happy? However, Sakura's physical body was not suitable for the magic of the Matsu family, so she needed to be modified. This was something that the head of the Matsu family, an old man named Matsuzoken, had told Tokiomi beforehand. Despite this, Tokiomi was willing to accept it. Modification is always painful, but it was for the sake of his daughter's happiness. Compared to the happiness of being able to become an excellent magus like her sister in the future, the minor pains of childhood are worth it. Even if his daughter would be troubled and rebellious because of this, Tosaka Tokiomi believed that this was only because she was still too young and didn't understand the reasoning behind his actions. She didn't understand how important it was for him to sacrifice his own feelings for her future happiness. As a magician with a father's love, isn't it natural for him to want to give his daughter what he believes will bring her the most happiness? Even if it means causing her suffering in her childhood and causing himself the suffocating pain of separation from his daughter, it is all worth it for the sake of her future happiness. Even if his young daughter does not understand this at the moment, when she grows up and becomes more understanding, she will surely be grateful for her father's deep love and will thank him for his choice when she is happily able to become an excellent magician like her sister. But his daughter ran away from home. Even though he was busy with war planning, Tosaka Tokiomi couldn't help but spare a moment to sigh at his daughter's lack of understanding. However, considering her age, he didn't say anything. He wasn't worried about his daughter getting into accidents. Even though she is young, she is a Magus' daughter and has self-defense item that Tosaka Tokiomi made specifically for her. It's just that his daughter's rebellion gives him a headache and needs to be properly addressed. Therefore, after sensing the item and confirming that his daughter is still alive, Tosaka Tokiomi chooses to focus on the life and death battle that is about to begin. Especially now that his daughter has been brought back home by his wife. Daddy. Sakura grabbed onto Tosaka Aoi's skirt and looked at Tosaka Tokiomi timidly. Go to sleep, Tosaka Tokiomi said affectionately as he stroked her head. The affectionate father is always lenient with his young and clueless daughter. Sakura was then taken away by Tosaka Aoi. Tokiomi returned to his desk, glancing over the information on the Holy Grail War participants that he had obtained and organized. Walla Hula, the Golden King, dressed in a casual white suit, sat on the sofa and poured red wine into a glass. He raised the glass slightly, his eyes like blood red sweeping over Tokiomi, Aoi, and the Tosaka children through the red wine. His handsome, distinctively featured face wore an elegant, joyful smile. What a delightful tragedy a group of hybrid blood will bring. The tears of a child pushed into the abyss by the love of a magus must be extremely delicious, and the despairing eyes falling into the abyss must be an exciting moment to witness. This script truly brings twice the joy to this king. The Golden King gently shook the wine glass, causing the red wine within to ripple slightly like blood. An inner joy smile graced his handsome face. Sakura has left. Her departure has left a sense of emptiness. Although it's not necessarily a devastating or heart-wrenching feeling, it's undeniable that something is missing now that they've lived together for half a month. It would be false to say that there are no feelings involved at all. However, because he had already prepared himself mentally, he can still bear it. In a few more days, the power of time will be enough to erase these psychological bumps. Besides, his own life is still hanging by a thread in the Holy Grail War. Where does he have the energy to think about other people's affairs? Is he so selfless? What a joke. Survival is the top priority for any living being. It's a natural instinct to prioritize one's own safety and well-being. It's just that he can't sleep. Shirou, who had been unable to sleep, sat up in bed again, rubbing his tired eyes and scratching his head in frustration. The moonlight outside leaked through the thin curtain, scattering faint mercury-colored patterns on the bedding. Shirou, looking disheveled, realized that his inability to sleep was abnormal. The missing person-shaped pillow that Shirou had hugged for the past half-month was no longer on the bed, making it difficult for him to get comfortable no matter how he turned. The worst part was that whenever he did manage to fall asleep, he would dream of Sakura being dragged into an abyss by endless black worms, reaching out to him for help and calling out, "Brother, brother." In the bathroom, Shirou splashed cold water on his face and looked at himself in the mirror. He gave himself a slap to try and snap out of it. Pa. Damn it. Wake up, Shirou. Fujimaru Shirou. You're not the original owner of this body, you're not a hero, you're just an ordinary person. She's not your whoever. Don't think so much. Go to sleep. However, despite his efforts, Shirou was still unable to fall asleep. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, bathed in cool moonlight, Shirou couldn't help but feel frustrated with himself. Was it his body or his own inability to let go that was preventing him from sleeping? The most annoying part was that his mind kept bringing up all of the memories from the past. There is always an unforgettable memory in Shirou's heart. That was a day from his second grade in elementary school in his previous life. China wasn't as developed then and was in the era of a real economy, where foreigners were more important than officials. Shirou, who walked to school with the other boys in the morning, saw a crying baby in a garbage heap on the way to the vegetable market. When he passed by again in the evening, the baby was still there, but it wasn't crying anymore. If he remembered it because it was sad, that couldn't be the case. Shirou was not a saint. He was just an ordinary person. But if he had been indifferent, he wouldn't still remember it now. And now he was facing a similar scene. He was in the same second grade of elementary school with similar problems. The difference was that he was no longer the little boy he used to be, but a mature soul in society. And being mature meant abandoning all immature elements and looking at things rationally. But, please, don't let me think about these things anymore. I don't want to think about these. It's none of my business. It's none of my business. She's just a little girl I've known for half a month. I'm not her dad. Her death has nothing to do with me. Shirou buried his head in the pillow and tried hard to fall asleep. But he still couldn't, no matter how hard he tried. Every time he closed his eyes, he thought about the problems he had been trying to avoid. It's really this body's brain that has problems. Shirou blamed the brain of his body, reaching out to the side and trying to hug the pillow like he was used to, but only grasping at air. As he expected, the biggest problem was still his habits. In the morning, Shirou went downstairs for breakfast, and Fujiwara Chiyo habitually made 3 breakfasts. Yesterday, after Mr. Fujiwara dealt with Sakura's matter, he returned to the company for overtime and had not returned yet. It was clear that the 3rd breakfast on the table was meant for someone else. Shirou pretended not to notice and picked up the sandwich in front of him to eat. I don't know what kind of person Sakura's father is. He must have a really big heart. Despite his daughter being missing for half a month, he's still busy at work. Fujiwara Chiyo's remark made it difficult for Shirou to swallow his breakfast that day. Shirou, wait here and take care of the house. Mom's going to buy vegetables. I'll go too. Shirou stood up. Fujiwara Chiyo found it strange that Shirou, who had not left the house since the serial killer incident, now wanted to go out. Was it because Sakura had been taken away? She guessed right, that's exactly what happened. Staying alone can make you think blindly, but going out and taking a walk can clear your mind and help alleviate your troubles. It can also help restore adult rationality. Shirou thought to himself that although he was not a bad person, he was definitely not a saint. To fight for a girl he had only known for half a month, only the protagonist of a juvenile fairy tale would do such a thing. In reality, no one else would. This troubled Shirou, mostly because of his naive brain and maybe his inherent kindness. At least, that's what Shirou thought. Otherwise, how could a person with a mature soul be like someone with a karmic obstacle? At most, they would sigh and feel guilty for a while, and then return to a normal life. Just relax, just relax. In 1993, the shopping markets of this era did not have the function of a vegetable market, so housewives had to go to the crowded and dirty vegetable markets to buy vegetables. However, it was not an obstacle for relaxation. It was just that. Looking at the blonde youth walking towards him, Shirou swallowed his saliva and unconsciously reached into his pocket with his right hand in the black leather gloves. My hand, could it really be a Siscon hand? Why am I so unlucky? Shirou mourned in his heart. The youth walking towards him had short, golden hair, a clear-cut face, and a handsome, classical appearance. He had a tall and slender figure, dressed in a white shirt and black casual pants, exuding a noble temperament. Gilgamesh, the first boss of the Fourth Holy Grail War. The most crucial thing is that this guy seems to have a future where he might be killed by the original Shirou. And, does this guy have foresight? Don't see me. Don't see me. Shirou lowered his head, pretending to be an ordinary neighborhood boy, and leaned closer to his mother. Huh, what's wrong, Shirou? Fujiwara Chiyo asked in confusion. Shirou didn't explain, but only leaned closer, trying to pretend to be an ordinary neighborhood boy who was close to his mother, in order to avoid Gilgamesh's passing route. Having fused with the spiritual foundation of a servant, becoming a demi-servant who is a participant and stand-in, but not knowing whether he is a substitute or not, Shirou only hoped that he would not attract the attention of Gilgamesh, the embodiment of Mr. Gold. However, Gilgamesh's gaze almost immediately fell on Shirou. Surprise, shock, puzzlement, confusion. In an instant, many complex expressions passed through Gilgamesh's blood-red eyes, and finally, a very interested smile appeared on his face. The two passed each other. It seemed that he had not been discovered. Shirou breathed a sigh of relief. However, just as they were about to completely pass each other, Gilgamesh's arrogant voice sounded in Shirou's ear. A mongrel brat. No, a faker. In 3 days, that little girl will be sent to the abyss of worms. Fear, doubt, confusion. In an instant, many complex expressions passed through Shirou's eyes. But when he turned to look again, Gilgamesh had already walked away. Shirou, what are you doing? Let's go. Fujiwara Chiyo pulled on Shirou's arm, dismayed to find that she couldn't even move her son. This was too strange, right? He was just a 6-year-old brat. Ah. Oh. Shirou followed his mother into the vegetable market in a daze. His mind was full of doubts. Did Gilgamesh recognize his identity? And did he recognize the spiritual foundation that he had fused with? It was understandable that he didn't do anything because it was daytime now, and this hero king was also very arrogant. But why? Why did he tell me this? Obviously,